So, in recent light of certain politicians and news commenters and political commenters that I follow, namely Tim Pool, he spoke about, in a recent video, about being concerned about automation of certain jobs, and thus Andrew Yang's argument for considering a universal basic income. And I will agree that there will be increased amounts of automation for less detail-oriented jobs, much like how you've had a lot of automation in the auto industry and automation that will occur in many other types of industries, much like in the effect of kiosks at McDonald's for food workers and things of that sort. However, I think there's a flaw in thinking that there is going to be automation, total automation in trucking, and I can get into some of the details as to why. The tildeer on it is, the most that I foresee it ever happening in the realistic future is autopilot, while you still have a driver in the seat to watch over. Because there's more to trucking than just holding the steering wheel and going down the interstate. There's responding to other vehicles acting erratically, construction, traffic, instances of all sorts, on top of getting into the detail-oriented locations of shippers and receivers. Not to mention maintaining the oil and the fluids in a truck, checking the temperature on your load, the filling of fuel in your truck, and the refrigeration unit, depending on the type of commodity, if you're running a refrigerated load. There has to be someone on hand at every step of the way to be capable of responding to each of these small little minuscule things. If you lose a mud flap, by law you need to have a mud flap on. You have to hang the mud flap, and sometimes you're only left to do it for yourself. So with my understanding of how the full automation would work, really the only real replacement for a truck driver in the full automation sense, in the scope of my understanding and perception of how our technology could evolve, is a fully autonomous cybernetic organism or entity. Think Lieutenant Commander Data of Star Trek Enterprise. It's hyperbolic, but I'm not trying to put it out there pejoratively or rhetorically. I'm being genuine in the utility, the intelligence, the adaptability, also the ability for that machine to do all the little small details and respond to the small details that can occur with a truck, mechanically speaking, problem solving, reaction, adaptability. And there's also all of the regulations that truck drivers have to obey. And let me show you something. We have to keep a book on our truck of all the trucking regulations as a reference, because there's so many, they know we can't memorize them. This is the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations pocketbook. These are all the trucking regulations, all of them. Let me show you something. And it's not in big print. It's a whole bunch. Regulation after regulation that we are to abide by. I mean, think of it like a trucking Bible in a sense. So, provided a curveball of technology, ingenuity, innovation, I will reserve the possibility for that. I realistically do not see automation taking away from truck drivers or the jobs for people to drive a truck for generations to come. At the earliest, I realistically see it not happening. My son is 4. He just turned 4. I'm thinking his grandchildren, maybe longer. Because you also have to factor in the working class job, the right to jobs, to people to earn for themselves. let alone the cost effectiveness of the technology and the reliability. And then you have all these safety advocacy groups like PAT and Crash. What's the reliability of these autonomous systems to not plow into a family of 4, to not respond to somebody running a red light, to think about how to respond to a stale green light, which is a strategy truck drivers use because we're so heavy and we have such a long stopping distance. If a light is green for it looks like it's been green for a while, we have that training to, hey, time to start slowing down because it's probably going to turn red, so you don't simply overshoot yourself, and even though you're slammed on the brakes, you're going to coast right through that intersection and possibly hurt someone. How do you program that into an autonomous operating system per se? And so there's more questions that need to be answered for sure, but there's also more educated questions to be asked so we can seek the better answer. Personally, I think the best response to people losing jobs in these low wage areas to automation, like food workers or certain factory jobs, get into trucking. There's been nothing but a trucker shortage since I've been in the game, and I've been in the game for 20 years. It's a lifestyle. It's not for everybody, but new people get into this field and they're making 30, 40 grand their first year. Experienced drivers are making $70,000, company drivers. Now, there's differences and nuances to regions and, how a driver runs. There's lots of details and lots of rabbit holes on how that can present itself. The type of commodities you haul and how hard you run. Mr. Poole, if you were to ever want to have a conversation about the details and the nuances of that, because you are a Yang supporter, though I am not a supporter of his, though I will not be the type to just simply dismiss him snidely, I'm open to a conversation. So you can have the answers to your questions and details that can give you a better formed viewpoint, and therefore we're all the smarter. But in the end, I think the most that it'll ever manifest itself, considering the cost effectiveness and with the projection of how technology will present itself, at least as far as my understanding and as far forward thinking as I can conceive, the best we can really ever see is think of it as autopilot for trucks. But you're going to have somebody in this seat to manage all the peripheral things that technology has not created yet, and to be reactive and to have someone there to troubleshoot to the capacity that a human can compared to any kind of AI in the current capability of what we're able to develop and what may be developed in the future. So I don't deny the capability of it ever happening. Question is how long, and I don't see it happening for a long time, because there's more to it than just the sheer ability of a truck to just look at the paint lines down the road and stay in the middle of those. I would have to look into how these autonomous trucks, what were the driving conditions, I'd have to sit in the seat and see where the good, bad, and ugly of it was, and how did it react to what we call Murphy Law things out of left field, like, was a car cutting it off, things like that. A tire retread that's in the middle of the road, how does it react to that? Like the sensors in these trucks, when it's raining hard, they don't work right. They don't work at all. They shut themselves down. So it's possible for sure, but not for a long way. If anything, people that are having a hard time finding jobs, look into trucking. There's jobs. They openly accept convicted felons. You just simply cannot haul certain commodities or go to Canada. But you'll get a job and you'll make good money. Nevertheless, I appreciate your work. I respect what you do. And I'll see you at your next podcast, man. See ya.